There's a house in Atchison, Kansas. A house so infamous, so disturbingly active, that even experienced investigators refuse to step inside alone. They call it the Sally House. Most people know the legends, but the true story, what actually happened inside those walls, is far more terrifying than the urban myths. Tonight, you're going to hear that story, exactly as it was lived, by the Pickman family. This is one of the darkest and most violent hauntings ever documented. The legend says that sometime in the mid-1800s, a doctor named Charles Finney operated on a dying young girl named Sally in the basement of his home, but gave her the wrong anesthetic. She died screaming on his table. It's a chilling story, but there's no historical evidence that this little girl ever existed. And that's what makes this haunting much more disturbing. Because whatever people see inside that house, whatever scratches them, whatever whispers in the walls, may not be a little girl at all. In the early 1990s, Tony and Deborah Pickman moved into 508 North 2nd Street. They were expecting their first baby. Deborah loved the paranormal. Tony didn't believe in any of it. For the first month, everything seemed normal. Then the small things started. Lights would dim. Ceiling fan chains swung on their own. The baby woke up screaming every time he slept in the nursery, but slept peacefully anywhere else. One night, Tony walked past the nursery. The light was on. 3 stuffed animals were sitting in the center of the floor, arranged in a perfect circle. He turned the light off, put the toys back, and went downstairs. By the time he reached the bottom step, click! The light flicked on again. He went back up. The toys had returned to the circle. This time, Deborah and her sister witnessed it too. Their dog refused to enter the nursery after that. Soon the activity began to escalate. Tony heard footsteps running up and down the stairs at night. He assumed it was their cats, until he checked and realized the stairs were empty. One night, he heard the footsteps rushing toward him. He felt a cold wind blast straight through his body, and then he heard it. Children laughing. House decorations flipped upside down. Candles melted without the wick being burned. A melted candle even had a small handprint seared into the wax. Small, isolated fires began appearing around the house, always targeted, always precise. Even the previous tenants had reported fires, especially in the nursery. That's when the Pickmans contacted the TV show Sightings, who began documenting everything. One night, Tony returned from work and went to the kitchen for a drink. When he turned around, he froze. At the entrance to the basement stood a little girl, wearing a white, old-fashioned dress. Her face was terrified. Her body was semi-transparent. Tony dropped his glass and ran upstairs. Later, he drew a sketch of what he saw. A former resident of the house recognized the girl immediately. She said it was her childhood imaginary friend. She called her Sally. But Tony soon realized the entity could change forms. He repeatedly saw what looked exactly like his wife, same face, same hair, except wearing clothing from another century. Every time he approached, the figure vanished. Whatever this thing was, it could appear as a child, or a loved one, or something that looked human, but definitely wasn't. The attacks began shortly after. Deborah stepped out of the shower to hear Tony say, "She bit me." On his leg were unmistakable bite marks. Then came the scratches, deep red marks appearing across his body, sometimes bleeding, sometimes forming right in front of the sightings team's cameras. At one point, the letters MC appeared scratched into Tony's skin, the initials of Michael C. Finney, the man who built the house. Tony would lay in bed and hear whispering in the walls, 6 or 7 distinct voices. One night, he saw dark dust drift past the window, then gather, then form into an elderly woman dressed in black. She floated toward him, the drawers beside the bed opening and slamming on their own, the mattress violently shaking beneath him. Her arms shot out, reaching for his throat as she shouted, "I'm going to—" Then, suddenly, a massive black bird appeared. The woman vanished. Everything went still. Tony couldn't scream. Deborah heard nothing. To him, it felt real. But nothing about this haunting followed the rules of reality. What happened next is the reason the Sally House is feared even among investigators. Something in that home began affecting Tony's mind. He heard voices telling him horrible things, telling him to hurt Deborah, to kill her. When he left the house, he felt normal. But inside it, the darkness swallowed him. He began having vivid nightmares of attacking his wife. And one morning, he walked into the kitchen, took out a butcher knife, saw the family cat, and then everything went black. Hours later, he returned to the house and found the cat dead, stabbed, pinned to the counter. He had no memory of doing it, but he knew he must have. The guilt destroyed him. Nothing psychological was wrong with him, according to doctors. But every violent urge, every blackout, only happened in that house. The final straw came when an invisible force threw Tony into the banister, breaking several wooden rungs, as if trying to throw him down the stairs. Deborah finally realized this wasn't a ghost story. They were in real danger. They moved out 3 weeks later. After the Pickmans left, another woman moved in. Within months, she was evicted for destroying the property. When the landlord entered the basement, he found symbols painted on the walls, names scratched into the brick, and a large pentagram painted onto the floor. The woman had barely any belongings. It appeared she had been using the house solely for rituals. Investigators still believe the basement is the house's focal point, especially the back room where bricks were removed, forming a dark opening into the wall. The Sally House has been investigated countless times. People from all over the world have recorded scratches, voices, and apparitions. But one piece of evidence stands above the rest. In 2018, the podcast Astonishing Legends placed a Panasonic recorder inside the nursery. The recorder only activates when it hears a sound. They left the room, closed the door, and what the recorder captured is something listeners have described as traumatizing. No effects, only increased volume. I won't play it here, but the moment you hear it, you'll understand why investigators refuse to stay inside this house alone. Because whatever is in the Sally House, it isn't a little girl. It never was. And according to everyone who's experienced it, it wants you to come back.